Hi, my name is Cecile Johnson. I am CEO of African Development Plan, and I'm here today as part of Global City Unity's community outreach to keep you informed about issues affecting the global Black community. These issues require us to be unified, knowledgeable, and on one accord so we can find some solutions. Today I have a special guest. This show is going to be on S.B. Fuller, and I bet many of you don't know who that is. And his grandson, Martin Casey, will be here to share with us the legacy of his grandfather, how it ties into what we're doing today in the Black community, and what we can learn from this great maverick. So, Mr. Martin, welcome.
Thank you.
How are you doing? So, I'm going to read something you had sent me, right? And the question I'm going to ask my viewers is, how many of you have heard about S.B. Fuller, right? S.B. Fuller, master of enterprise, a great businessman, is remembered by Elizabeth Wright, reprinted from Issues and Views, winter 1989. F.B. Fuller preached economic independence, and he lived it. As in the case of many great people, his death was quietly reported in the news media. There was no fanfare and little editorial comment. Yet there is no doubt that the life of S.B. Fuller will stand out as a remarkable achievement, not only in the annals of Black history, but as a part of the history of free enterprise. When he died on October 27, 1988, he was 83 years old. He left behind a legacy that once included a vast business network, created and expanded by him during the very worst days of Jim Crow bigotry. Raised in poverty in Louisiana, the young Fuller began work as a door-to-door salesman. With only a sixth grade education, he possessed a drive and belief in his abilities which subdued virtually every obstacle placed in his path by racial discrimination. Fuller parlayed his innate intelligence and organizing skills into a multi-million-dollar conglomerate of companies throughout the United States. He became a leader in the sales of cosmetics, starting his first cosmetic firm, the Fuller Products Company, in 1935 with $25. Granted, $25 went a lot further then than it did today. He ultimately owned or controlled 8 other corporations, which included the Courier newspaper, with papers in Pittsburgh, Chicago, New York, and Detroit, a Chicago department store, a New York real estate trust. Only the strange, ironic twistings and turnings of events unique to the American Black experience could find a man like Fuller ostracized by his own people, not content with the malicious wars waged against Fuller's businesses throughout the years by the Ku Klux Klan, the white citizens' councils in the South. Prominent Blacks went on to publicly condemn and shun him and urge others to do the same. Branded in the 1960s as an Uncle Tom, and sometimes with worse epithets, by the leading luminaries of the civil rights establishment, Fuller companies were boycotted by the Black masses. Now, this is crazy, right?
Yes.
Because I've heard of so many others, and when they die, and they don't look like us, right? There's a whole splash and all of that. And yet, I want to know more. What happened with Mr. Fuller, right? This maverick came in, created all of this at a time when so many Black people were not even able to walk freely, right? He created wealth at such a level, created all those organizations, the media, all of that. What happened? Tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got involved with this, and then what happened.
Well, I was fortunate enough to be brought into this family through Mr. Fuller's daughter. Actually, she adopted me. There was a woman working for the company called Cecile Johnson, and she was looking after me for another woman that was taking care of me. And Mr. Fuller asked her why she hadn't been to work. So said, well, I'm here taking care of Marty. So he told her to bring me in, and his daughter wasn't working at the time, and she'll look after me. And he brought me into the office so she could go to work, and left me with Mary Casey. Now Mary Casey, but Mary Fuller at the time. She fell in love with me, and I fell in love with her, and the rest was history. I was very fortunate to be a part of this family. I believe it was fate that brought me to this, and I was destined to perpetuate my grandfather's legacy. I was a part of the organization when I was a small boy. He would give me $5 to run up on the podium and tell the salespeople to go to work. and he would pay me for that.
Okay.
Also, when I wasn't doing well in college, and really was told that I was kind of uneducable. So my mother was a scholar. My little brother was a scholar. Everybody was scholarly in my family. So college was where to go. But it didn't fit me. But she knew one thing: I had to make it in life. And she knew her father could teach me. And that's why she brought me to Chicago and instructed me to Mr. Fuller to mentor me. And he mentored me and taught me many things, and told me that I could make it. He told me in 1935 there were over 4,043 millionaires in America. 89 of them had a high school education, and the rest of them were illiterate. And I knew that day I could make it. And I have ever since. I've been self-employed since 1988 and owned and operated my own construction business. I worked from there to owning properties throughout the Chicago area. I worked from there to owning and operating a car wash. And now I own a Dudley franchise at 8501 South Green, which is Dudley Beauty College. And I am also affiliated with Dudley and its manufacturing line of products. And in the course of all this, I will be bringing back the Fuller product line.
Awesome, awesome. So the key here is they found you uneducatable, they said, right?
Uneducable.
Uneducable, right? and you've proved that's not so, right? And by pointing out the statistics on the millionaires, as we can see from Bill Gates and many of the others, didn't complete college, right?
Right.
So even though we're education buffs and push getting an education, many of the times those who go on to become the most successful.
Well, you have to understand the
that.
purpose of education.
Okay.
Education was created by the rich. The colleges were funded by the wealthy.
Right.
To create a new workforce for them to work us to make them wealthier.
And we're seeing that today.
Well, we've seen that through all the races. It just isn't black or white. It's through every race. As a business person, you have to, you have to create business, and you have to market your business. So you need to employ people.
Right. Well, I want to get a little bit into that because in 1963, I think it is.
Yes.
Yes, December 6, 1963, folks. Businessman S.B. Fuller presented to the National Association of Manufacturers. This was a white organization, right?
Yes, it was.
And this article is entitled...
Which he became a member of.
Which he became a member of, okay? So this is in Jim Crow, right? This gentleman is now being recognized, and he's becoming a member. And he says, the article is entitled, "It's not racial barriers that keep blacks from prospering. American blacks must pool capital in order to help themselves." So I want to share this with you because I need you to understand what the controversy is, or was, right? He said here, "It is contrary to the law of nature for man to stand still. He must move forward, or the eternal march of progress will force him backward. This the black man has failed to understand." Marcus Garvey said this too. He believes that the lack of civil rights legislation and the lack of integration have kept him back, but this is not true. In 1952, the average black man's income was 57% of that of the white man's, but in 1962, it was only 53% of his income. In a period of 10 years, the black man's income had dropped 4 percentage points in comparison with the white man's income. The main reason for this is black lack of understanding of our capitalist system of government. Now, y'all need to listen up. Capitalism is defined as an economic system in which capital and capitalists play the principal part. specifically the established economic system of most modern civilized countries, in which the ownership of land and natural wealth, the production, distribution, and exchange of goods, the employment and reward of human behavior, of human labor, and the extension, organization, and operation of the systems itself are entrusted to and affected by private enterprise and control under competitive conditions. Okay, so first we need to understand the system that we're operating in. He says this Black America does not understand. Let's take, for example, distribution at the retail level. 1/6 of all the people employed in America are employed in retail sales. This was 1963. 11,650,000 people in retail sales in 1962. If the Black man had the amount of initiative, courage, and imagination required, he could control the retail selling in his own community. Since he represents 10% of the population today, he would be able to employ 1,065,000, right? 10% of that number. There are 1,788,325 retail sales establishments in America, and yet in New York City, where over 1 million Black people live, they do not own 15 businesses which employ over 10 people. Unfortunately, Blacks believe that there is a racial barrier in America which keeps them from succeeding. Yet if they would learn to use the laws of observation, concentration, memory, reason, and action, they would realize that there is a world of opportunity right in their own communities. Because the Black man does not own and control retail establishments in his own community, he is unable to stabilize his community. For every evening at the close of business, the substantial citizen, you know, the one who have all your money, leave the community and goes to another community to live, thus leaving Black communities impoverished, and the wealth derived from the community through retail sales is transferred to the other community, thus building up that community. Folks, we've talked about the 6-hour journey that the dollar spends in the Black community and the 30-day journey that it spends in the Asian community, the 20 days in the Jewish community, the 17 days in the overall white community. So what S.B. Fuller was saying in 1962 applies today even more so, right? 6-hour journey, now. Even worse now. He said, these merchants are not to be blamed for this because the supply and demand must be satisfied. Right. We need food, we need clothes, we need housing, we got cars, we need insurance. So these people are only coming in to fill in the gap. Right. Since Blacks do not supply the demand in their own communities, the white man must come in. Well, today, it's the Asian, right? It's all these other people who come into our community. And he takes advantage of the opportunity. Then Blacks think that there's a racial barrier that keeps them from making progress. Therefore, Blacks ask for legislation to remove the barrier, which they automatically created themselves due to their lack of action. The average Black man believes that the purpose of business is to furnish jobs. But this is not true. The purpose of business is to render service and make a profit. Profit seems to be a bad word in the Black community, right? Yeah. And by doing this, it must employ people. You understand what I'm saying? It's a mindset.
Yes.
These people must be able to render service, produce a commodity that the businessman can sell at a profit. If not, the business can no longer employ the individual, right? Right. Black people must pool their capital in order to help themselves. They must establish retail sales organizations throughout their communities and must go into light manufacturing where retail sales has already produced an outlet for the product light manufacturing can produce. This will enable Blacks to help solve their own problems. Wow. 1962. So, those of you listening, I'm going to ask Mr. Casey, so what's wrong with what your grandfather said? Why did people ostracize him?
Well, they ostracized him because they published only parts of his speech in different publications. Jackie Robinson was also a participant in the ostracizing of calling him an Uncle Tom. And he said he could not be an Uncle Tom because he employed whites. And Uncle Tom never employed any white people. Mr. Fuller didn't believe in a white or racial barrier. He gave you what you needed on your own merit. Your color had nothing to do with it. Racial barriers are not what is dealing with enterprise and business. The dollar in the economy, we don't understand business. We don't do business. And what businesses we do are lacking in so many ways because we do not know. and we're not willing to know. He trained thousands upon thousands of African American men and women to be good business people, taught them how to service and render a service. He told them to be godlike, you must serve God's people. He was ostracized in this because he told it to a white audience. And what he was trying to tell them, and of the literaries of the day, like Martin Luther King and all the marching and all this stuff, they were trying to get legislation to change their outlook on life by making them be accepted in the white community. But Mr. Fuller said, don't work where you can't own. The others said, don't work unless, you can be employed there. Don't buy if you can't be employed. So it was a different concept. Mr. Fuller's philosophy was one of self-sufficiency, one of independence. If you didn't like how one person ran a business, go next door and build your own business. There are opportunities out here every day, but we don't take advantage of them. We're always with our hand out, asking for handouts instead of making it for ourselves. And his idea was pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. But the literaries of that day said we don't own any boots.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing, because I have also spoken about the black condition, right? And I speak about race. When I connect the dots, I definitely can show you how race is connected. But I also understand perspective model, right? So life is an elephant. We're all blind. We're standing around the elephant, and I ask you to describe it. So you're standing by the tail, you're going to describe that. You're standing by the leg, you're going to describe that. You're standing by the snout, you're going to describe that. The question is that the elephant? Yes, it's a part of the elephant, but in order for us to understand this full condition, we have to put all the pieces together, then we get a better picture of the elephant, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so how I see what you're saying is I'm in agreement with what Mr. Fuller is saying, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not discounting the things that we talk about when we talk about the impact of race, the impact of the legislation that was needed, etc., right? And why is that? Because there are practices that were put into place when you watch a film like White Like Me by Tim Wise, where he begins to break down white privilege and how things were put into place that actually benefited people who came in.
But we're privileged.
Right.
That's what we lack to understand.
Well, tell us
we
about
can't
that.
legislate someone to move next to us.
Right.
But we have to compete with them. If they keep their yard up, why shouldn't you keep your yard up? That's part of the civilized society of capitalism, and we have to compete. When another race is ostracized, they go out and beat the ostracizer with better service. We don't do that. When he said we needed courage, without risk, without a challenge for us, we're just living day by day. We as our race, we have to build businesses that supply jobs for our people.
That meet our needs.
That meet all our needs. Mm-hmm. Housing. Developments are built for us. Mm-hmm. They're not built by us.
And they're substandard.
And they're always substandard.
Mm-hmm. So they can be built over and over again by the same people.
Right.
I agree with you. Marcus Garvey said the same thing. He said if we don't consider ourselves worthy and behave in that way, then other people will see us as something less than, right? And so he says, up you mighty race, right? So what I'm really hearing from your grandfather is about self-determination. And that's a human right.
Well, self-sufficiency.
Right? Well, self-sufficiency and self-determination, because he's not asking somebody to help him to do it. He's saying, I'm going to do this myself.
Right.
And he's saying, let's look at the market. In our community, we have needs. food, clothing, shelter, right? Hierarchy of needs. We have healthcare, right? We have people need gas for their cars, etc., right? So what does that mean? He's saying that all of these needs need to be fulfilled.
Right.
And how are we going to fulfill them? So really there should not have been a conflict. It's sad because I see the same thing happening today. There was a woman who did an article about New Orleans, and she was highlighting all the negatives of Chicago and saying we needed, something catastrophic to happen. And people were jumping all over what she was saying. And they didn't look at all the things that she had documented, right? And saying, look at all the terrible things that are happening here. What is it going to take to create a change, right? So it sounds to me like your grandfather was kind of saying the same thing. And that many times in our community, we have those who are alleged leaders, who will jump on something, don't digest it fully, take it and run with it. Now, Mr. Fuller was a millionaire. Mr. Fuller created jobs. Mr. Fuller came from nothing, poverty, to something. So shouldn't a better approach have been to go and have a conversation with him, right? A private conversation, find out what was going on behind this, and then weigh what he did or what he has done to this point over,
They had different, as you would read in the book,
What book is that?
The S.B. Fuller book.
Okay, can we see it? Can you show that? I see you have it here.
My mother, Mary Fuller Casey, wrote this book. It's the S.B. Fuller, Pioneer of Black Economic Development. And the purpose of this book was to tell people what they needed to know about him and hopefully enrich their lives.
Okay. I see you have some other things, so tell us a little bit about all that.
Well, we have the CD, which I produced, and we have a gentleman, Joe L. Dudley Sr., that he started Dudley Products. He was also president of Fuller Products. He came out of the school of Fuller Products.
Right.
Mr. Fuller had meetings every morning, and he trained his sales force on how to sell. He trained you how to live. He trained you how to think and how to be.
Right.
Mr. Dudley came in during the difficult times that Mr. Fuller had and actually absorbed the company and took it to North Carolina.
Okay.
And it gave people the opportunity to still perpetuate the legacy of Mr. Fuller and the philosophy.
So all that curriculum is still available for us to use?
All of that is still available. I am doing the same thing that my grandfather did. I run a distributorship. I can employ thousands of people.
Okay.
But our people don't want to sell. Our people do not want to do what they need to do to succeed. Right
so
now,
how do we bridge that gap, right? Because
how do we bridge
sometimes the adults you can't reach.
Because everybody wants technology to take care of everything.
Right.
And because we live in a technological age, okay, when we were building industries and business and the milkman was going to door, the paper man was going to the door, everybody was going to the door, the clothing man, the brush man, they were all going to the door. But we weren't going to the door. Only
Right.
Mr. Fuller was going to the door. We haven't graduated to be the superior. We're looking for, to put up a Macy's or mall. We don't have that money. We don't have that time. We just don't have what it takes. We haven't done our due diligence. We need to go to the community. If we want to do whatever we have to do, we have to go to the community and educate them. First, we must educate ourselves in our own branches and organizations, as Mr. Fuller did. We must go out into the communities because first of all, there are only 3 bricks and mortars that we own. The churches, the hair salons, and the men's hair cutting.
Now the barbershop.
The barbershops. That's all. That's the only brick and mortar that we own and operate as businesses.
So how do we utilize the church, the hair salon, and the barbershop? Because it seems like while you're there waiting for your haircut, that's a sales opportunity. While you're at the church.
Sell products
Right.
because we manufacture. One thing Joe L. Dudley does is he does not sell his products in any of the service places that you might go for. He doesn't sell to the public. He sells strictly to salons.
Direct sales.
Strictly to salons.
Okay.
And that's the opportunities that I offer every day for people to come in. Just like Mr. Fuller gave them a black bag to go, and that black bag gave them merchandise to sell. We give them merchandise to sell as well. We're not asking them for a dime.
Do you have a program that you're creating
No,
that can reach young people?
I have a program.
But I'm talking
not
about
that
young
I'm creating.
people. Young people.
I have a program in place that can employ young people,
Okay.
middle-aged people, whoever even has a salon. We can even put the products in the salon for them and teach them how to market the products and make a profit.
How do people get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me through Dudley Beauty College. I don't know the number offhand directly, but they can get, I have from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. every Monday evening. I have an empowerment class that we've started from North Carolina. It is Walking by Faith, and we teach and empower people and business people. We work with business people that have inventions. We have business people that have creativity. We deal with people that want to invest. We are recruiting people, but we must go into our neighborhoods. We must go into the highways and the byways and compel people to believe in themselves, empower themselves, and invest in themselves. Because without
Those
risk,
are powerful words.
without risk, there is no progress.
Without risk, there's no progress. Okay.
There is no progress.
Without risk, no progress. So Frederick Douglass said, without what? Challenge? Without progress?
No, without risk, there is no progress.
Okay, without risk, no progress. Okay. So we are running out of time here, but you've started a stimulating conversation, and I didn't get a chance to talk to you about some of the other things that you're doing. So we're going to have you come back again, right, to talk about those, but we want to end on this. You've talked a little bit about your grandfather. We've seen, I would encourage people to get that speech and read it, right, and take it apart. Break it apart and see how does what he's saying really does apply to us. He's explained the system, and if we want to be business people in the system, and economics is the base that Claude Anderson says is needed before we can go anywhere else up the power scale, right? And then also imagine what we could have been, where we could have been, had we, instead of pulling at him, helped to build him more, right? And then build more others.
Well, unfortunately, that didn't happen. But Mr. Puller always said, whatever business that you want to go into, most likely somebody has already done it before you.
Right.
All you have to do is find that person and that formula and follow that road.
Right.
Business is not rocket science, but it is an industry which will help you progress and be a better individual and a better in your community.
Well, I want to thank you. We've run out of time. Thank you, Mr. Casey, Casey Martin, for coming in and sharing your grandfather's legacy, showing us your grandfather's analysis, and I believe that he was correct in many of the things that he said, right? And my name again, folks, is Cecile Johnson. I'm with African Development Plan, and I want to thank Global City Unity Community Outreach for giving us this time to come in and bring people like Mr. Casey on so he can talk about, Casey Martin, come on and talk about, I keep mixing your name up. Martin Casey, come on and talk about the legacies that we have. We have so much history in our community that we really just need to reconnect with. Get a copy of his book, let's read, call him at the school and connect with that Monday evening, 6 to 9. You're getting mentoring, right?
Yes, you get mentoring.
See how you can get in there and see how we can begin to learn from the masters, okay? Thank you for joining us on this program.
Thank you.